Here's a good one. Muskrat Falls. Muskrat Falls being challenged in the courts. The environmental groups are taking the government's, plural, to court over the Muskrat Falls project. The Grand River Labrador and the Sierra Club of Canada have filed a judicial review application with the federal court on the grounds that the Joint Review Panel's environmental assessment was unlawful and incomplete. What? I've invited this crowd, Eco Justice, to give us a call today to elaborate on what is unlawful in their opinion. Unlawful is a very specific term. It means you're breaking the law. The project, in some people's opinion, may be stupid. It may be ill-timed. It may be unjust. It may be immoral. It may be completely ridiculous and with alternatives not considered. That's more than one word. But is it unlawful? I don't get it. I just don't get it. Some groups are, of course, so opposed to the project that the grasps at desperate measures to cease or slow down the project. Everything is being thrown at the wall. I don't quite get this one. But Grand River Keeper says Muskrat Falls will lead to significant damage to Grand River and its watershed and to the wildlife it supports, such as the threatened red wine caribou herd. Possibly true. I'm not even sure. But we've got other threats to the red wine caribou herd that are getting away with it, and in essence, bloody murder regarding that herd for quite a long time. What are we doing about that? Well, we threaten them, and what do they say? Go to hell. So, I don't know. If you want to talk about that, I think it's interesting. Welcome back to the program. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Now joining us on line one from Nova Scotia is Bruno Marcocchio. Sir, is that how you pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, it is, Paddy. How are you today?
I'm terrific. You're on the air, sir. Thank you for calling.
Thanks for the opportunity.
I sent an email through Kimberly at Eco Justice requesting this telephone call. I guess what I'd like for you to do for us, sir, is to elaborate how a government endorsement of a project becomes unlawful.
Well, it's our view that the Joint Review Panel that reviewed the Lower Churchill Hydroelectric Project has not complied with the law. Specifically, we believe that the panel failed to assess and reach conclusions on key factors under the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act and under its terms of reference. In our view, the panel failed to complete its environmental assessment. What it did, it generally did well, but it didn't reach conclusions or findings on all the factors that it was obligated to take into account. As is clear from the panel's report, Paddy, the panel failed to reach conclusions on key issues like the need for the project, alternatives to the project, and the cumulative effects of a project. We hope that as a result of our lawsuit, the panel will be asked by the courts to finish the job by assessing the issues of need, alternative, and cumulative effects, and reaching some actual conclusions instead of punting them away. Paddy, are you satisfied that your province is about to spend $6 to $10 billion without addressing the issue of need, alternatives?
Well, the question of need has been assessed and also has been verified from a variety of outdoor groups. Before we go to my position on it, which I'm happy to share, Bruno, what you explain and what you elaborate on there, that sounds to me like political opposition, not any question of lawfulness.
I fail to understand your point. These are points of law.
Okay, so the failure to assess alternative forms of energy constitutes a criminal act?
Alternatives to this project, the need for this project has not been adequately assessed. You're about to spend $6 to $10 billion without establishing that there's a need for a project. You have a regulated utility there that makes a guaranteed return. The more money it spends, the more it makes. Your premier has already said that it will cost between 17.6 and 18.2 cents delivered to St. John's. Are you willing to pay that doubling of the prices and more when the additional 40% of the power will not be sold? Do you know, Paddy, that Ontario has signed a long-term deal for 5 cents a kilowatt from power from Quebec? And are you aware that...
I'm aware of all these things, Bruno. The fact of the matter is the project was designed to satisfy the power needs in this province, is the premise it's being sold and developed on anyway. And so far as my need or want, once again, sir, when you talk about the expense associated with something, the verified need for power, alternatives exhausted, none of that sounds like an eco-justice thing. Doesn't this, people who are listening to our conversation here, aren't they going to think that this is simply a thinly veiled political piece of opposition, has nothing to do with the environment whatsoever?
Well, Paddy, you haven't made much of a case. You're just being inflammatory, and I guess that's what you like to do. But I've outlined for you very precisely the points of law. The panel has not reached conclusions. You give someone a job, lay it out in the terms of reference, and they come back and say, have someone else do it. Does that sound reasonable to you, Paddy?
Just the accusation of I being inflammatory, possibly so, but I guess we're doing a fairly good job of that, both of us here this afternoon. My issue with your lawsuit, and it wasn't even an issue, I actually requested an elaboration so I could understand. So now that it's been constituted that I'm opposed to your perspective, then I guess I'll play along. I'm satisfied that if you want to talk down the list of alternatives that can and should and have been investigated, then I guess we could speak to that. Natural gas, for instance, sir. I think
that's a good idea, but I have to start, Paddy, by saying there's only one of us playing politics here, and it's you. And I don't think you're serving the ratepayers in Newfoundland very well.
But I'm not selling the deal, sir. I'm not Nalcor, nor am I the provincial government. All parties, naysayers, proponents, Nalcor, government officials, educated opposition to the project have all had ample opportunity on this program and are welcomed. So I'm not selling. I'm simply accepting phone calls. People say what they like. I engage in conversation for the purpose of highlighting their good and bad points in their argument.
You made an accusation that this action was political, and you've yet to make any kind of a case on how it's political.
Okay, here I go then, one more time. Let me see if this makes no sense, then feel free to say so. It is being sold as a unlawful act. The banner that the news release came on was eco-justice. You explained the reasons for not having gone through the recommendations and exhausted all avenues, a la looking at alternative forms of energy, the complete environmental assessment, and I'm trying to regurgitate what you said.
You missed my point.
Pardon me?
You missed my point.
Okay, so you can make that point quickly, sir. Go ahead.
I'll repeat it again quickly. The panel is unlawful because it did not fulfill the functions and duties set out for it by the federal and provincial government under its terms of reference. Nothing political about that. They haven't done the job. For instance, Paddy, most crucially to the residents of Newfoundland and Labrador, they did not make a determination on whether this is financially viable. I would be troubled if I were you when your premier is already guaranteeing you that she's going to double your rates when there is no need either in Newfoundland for this power or abroad. 40% of the power after 20% is given away merely for the cost of constructing a link to Nova Scotia. Will get 20% of the power. Newfoundland claims it needs 20% of the power despite the fact that it's deindustrializing and you have excess hydro capacity that you're not now using on the island. Mm-hmm. You expect someone to believe that that it's all right to not look at the economics of this project?
So I think the economics have been looked at with due diligence and exhausted, is my understanding. I think you've fallen for some of the politics associated with this, though, Bruno. For instance, the doubling of power. Not even the most harsh naysayers even fall for that anymore. It doesn't line up to the economics that have been evaluated by parties on both sides. For instance, 37% doesn't constitute double, and that's numbers which have been accepted by, including the consumer advocate here in this province. He's supposed to be an unbiased, not political representative. So I'll accept that his analysis of the numbers is fair and accurate. Everything else that you say, I've actually enjoyed the conversation a great deal, sir. I was looking for an elaboration on what constituted unlawful, and you gave me your points of law that have not been satisfied, and I assume that's why the lawsuit goes ahead. My assumption that it is not really an environmental protection piece that is being forwarded by you folks seems to have been verified. Anything else, sir?
Yes. You seem stunningly unaware that neither the Public Utilities Board or the Joint Review Panel has been permitted by the province of Newfoundland to do an economic analysis. Again, all your listeners should be very worried. Why is it that they're hiding the figures on this? Why is it that we can't have Nalcor open the books and decide for ourselves? The Public Utilities Board or the Joint Review Panel that was legally entrusted to do just that. They've been denied. The PUB has been denied. And yet, here you are, politically running interference for a government that...
Oh, yeah, sure, Bruno. I'm politically running interference. Let's put it this way. The PUB and other agencies that have looked at it, if it was so unlawful, don't you think they might have stood up and said, you know what, we are breaking the law by not considering all the facts and all the numbers and open books, and everyone can come in and go through the filing cabinets and determine what is legitimate and what is not.
Well, that's what we hope to establish at the federal government shortcoming in the federal courts. And let's let the courts do that.
Absolutely, I'm all for it. I'm all for full investigation. You don't listen to this program. I don't blame you. You know, whatever turns you on. But what I will say is we've asked an awful lot of questions. We've asked questions for the justified purpose of getting answers. If people can make up their own mind, and your assumption that if we open the books and everyone has their own look and can make their own evaluation, sir, it's the same thing as people asking for a plebiscite on this. Most people don't know enough, can't know enough. If they had this volume of every piece of info on Muskrat Falls on their nightstand, would never be informed enough to cast a vote to determine the fate of power generation in this province, or in Nova Scotia, or regarding shale gas, or LNG, or wind, or small hydro, or whatever the case may be.
I disagree with you, Paddy. I think your listeners have a lot more intelligence than you're giving them credit for.
No, some of our listeners are absolutely highly intelligent, no question about it. I'm saying the normal voter, the age of majority, most of them don't care because they think the province is on the right track. A lot of them trust people that are in charge with doing this particular project. Some very renowned, reputable, well-standing people in our community are the people at the helm. Whether or not you agree with their assumptions, sir, that's up to you and the other naysayers. I don't put them down for having one position or another. You don't appreciate my opinion? That's fine. It doesn't affect me one bit. I'm glad you called the show. I'm glad we've had the conversation. People, once again, have more fodder to make them up their own mind.
Paddy, there's there's one point. We haven't talked about the alternatives at all.
Such as?
Well, the alternatives of demand-side management are what everyone else is moving to. And we presented evidence before the Joint Review Panel from BC Hydro that showed and have documented that for every dollar they spend on demand-side management, that is, reducing the need for electrical power in their province by subsidizing people to improve their efficiency, change windows, furnaces, lighting systems, industry drives, that for every dollar spent, they recover $3.
The province and the federal government have had these programs in place for quite some time.
They're not aggressive in Newfoundland. They're falling way behind the rest of the country. Most of the province is dependent on electric heat.
That's right.
The most inefficient type. If that were converted to air-to-air heat exchangers, if we used alternatives like natural gas and developed them, we'd be all much better off.
Yeah, natural gas is a tricky one here because we are, of course, not on the mainland. Access to pipeline already in existence. People with the infrastructure in their home or in the major commercial or government buildings to use natural gas as a form of firing heat, any type of power generation is not here. The province doesn't have a natural gas royalty regime. We have no access to the offshore gas without negotiating with oil and gas companies who actually, in effect, produce it and own it.
Are you listening to what you're saying, Paddy? You're saying that Newfoundland doesn't have access to its own natural gas. What a crock you're trying to sell.
We don't have a royalty regime. We can't even produce it on land. This is not, I'm not making shit up here, man. I worked in the gas business. We did a report for the provincial government. We do not have a natural gas royalty regime to even recover what's on land on the west coast of Newfoundland. The companies that are junior and major oil and gas companies haven't even qualified how much gas is out there. The oil companies that are producing offshore, they choose to flare it as opposed to produce it, given the economics and the cost of gas on the market.
You're not keeping up, Paddy. Cabinet Martin has made a strong case that
he has not.
That turning Holyrood into being fired by natural gas is both cost-effective, affordable, and achievable, and it would also bring gas onto the island of Newfoundland that would allow the natural resources that you're now squandering to be used instead of having to use electric heat and paying in excess of 20 cents a kilowatt.
The people who are squandering it are actually the ones out there producing oil. They choose a variety of things to do with the natural gas. Re-inject it for productivity. They flare it off. That's the value they see in some of these companies. There's been exhaustive analysis of pipeline from White Rose. Steve Bruno, who was a renowned fellow who was doing a presentation on his concept of pipelining it in on the ocean floor. Once again, people are looking at it, I think. I mean, I think that's fair to say. Mr. Bruno, for sure, is being applauded and trumpeted by an awful lot of people. I don't dissuade their efforts, but I think natural gas is in a position on the market that it doesn't make economic sense for a variety of companies, including major oil and gas companies, to invest in producing it.
Again, you're just running a political interference here. And
okay.
How are you going to sell power that costs 20 to 25 cents to deliver to markets in New England?
I don't know.
How are you going to sell 40% of the power from this project when they're buying it for 5 cents?
Bruno, who's paying you?
5.
Who's paying you?
Who's paying
your bill?
Who's paying my bill?
Yeah, right.
What's the point?
You're saying I'm running political interference. I get paid by NewCap. We're a radio company, man. Who's paying your bill?
Sierra Club Canada's paying my bill. But the question...
Well, they have their own... You have your own political agenda and stance on this. I'm not insulting you, sir, but with your opinions, you're insulting me, which I can take it. You can't. That's fine. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Paddy, you started by accusing me of being a political hack when you...
No. Hack never comes out of my mouth, other than when a couple of people in particular.
Paddy, how are you going to sell power in New England for between 22 and 25 cents and buy it for 5? Answer the question, Paddy, for all of the listeners.
The project has been developed to satisfy power needs on the island of Newfoundland and in the big land of Labrador for a variety of things. The access to market has not been solidified. There are no contracts in place, period. I'm not going to pretend there is, because there ain't.
How are you going to sell it for 25 when they can buy it? Hi, Paddy.
Bruno, I just admitted that there's no contracts in place. What do you want me to do here? Make stuff up like you are? I'm late to go to my break. I invited you on. I'm glad you reciprocated with a telephone call. I've actually enjoyed it. And I wish you all the best, sir, and we'll keep a close eye on the lawsuit.
Okay, Paddy, just one last thing. There's a silver lining in all of it.
To be quick. Go ahead.
This project goes ahead. It's going to make the deal that Joey Smallwood signed, it's going to make him look like a genius.
Well, now you're a political hack. Thanks, Bruno.
All right.
All the best, buddy. There you go, Bruno Marcocchio.